What is your favorite part about being in the United States?
Eating real spam. I mean, there's spam in the Philippines, but it tastes different.
It's different. What are some things you've learned from last year's visit to this year's visit?
Earlier, I was taking a phone call. The lady that I'm talking to, she was like, "Are you in Yakima store?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm in Yakima." Building connections with them, knowing who you've spoken with over the phone. Like, oh my God, they're real.
Yeah,
they're
real
people.
people.
Yeah.
Okay, hey, welcome to the Offsite Team podcast. I am here with my good friend April, and guess what? We're here in person. Welcome to the United States.
Yes. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. This is our third, well, not our, this is your third visit to the States in the last, basically year and a half. And it's really nice to have you come.
Yeah. Thank you for having me here.
You are very welcome. And we absolutely love having you here because when you come here, you get to interact with our U.S. staff.
Right.
And there's something about just seeing you, like I could even touch you.
I'm real.
And it's great to have Zoom meetings, and Zoom really works well, but it's one of those, it's great to have you here in person. So I don't know if we'll get one done or 3, 4, or 5. We're going to record a few podcasts for our valued listeners of Offsite Team. And I will say, today has been kind of a heavy day on my heart, and you know this, but I think I was debating, do I share this with our listeners? And I'm like, you know what? We try to be as real as possible because the people listening to our podcast, they are just trying to survive. They truly are. They are trying to survive. Medicare cut our reimbursements again, January 1st, and in the state of Washington, which we do like 99% of our business, our Medicaid cut their reimbursement again on July 1st. Yeah. And so what we had to do, unfortunately, today is at our U.S.-based store, we had to lay off 4.5 team members today, or 4.5 employees. And it's been a sad day here in the Yakima Valley. We did everything in our power not to lay anyone off. But it's one of those things, even though our sales have gone up, our efficiency has gone up, sometimes it's just like math is math. And when I was in high school, I don't think I've ever told you the story, I had this Vietnamese math teacher. And if you ever got a problem wrong in a Vietnamese accent, I hope I don't offend someone here, he'd be like, "Eric, you cannot do magic math. It's got to be real math." And it was even better because he had this Vietnamese accent. No magic math. But that applies to our businesses. We can't do magic math. We can't just put our head down and just say, "Hey, I sure hope it goes okay." Because it does not work that way, does it?
Yep. Agree.
I assume in the same in the Philippines.
Yes, it is.
They
the same.
expect you to pay your bills. You can't make little IOUs. No. And so, so unfortunately, it's a really sad day. So if you walk out of my office here, it is just, everyone's sad. And we had to lay off 4.5 people. And, but I will say, I was talking to one of our co-owners of our company, and he said to me, he goes, "Eric, I am so thankful for our offsite team members, because if it wasn't for our offsite team members, it's one thing, you just don't lay people off, because if you lay people off and don't have someone else to make up the work, eventually it catches up with you, because we have to verify insurance reimbursement, we have to order the items, we have to do deliveries, and the way we are able to do business going forward is we've compensated with our offsite team members. So literally we've looked at, okay, what can be housed in the Philippines and what needs to be housed in the United States. And it's great because I go to the Philippines every winter when not hurt, and you come here once a year. So this is, now you were here last year, now you're here this time. So before we jump into insurance, we're going to talk about insurance documentation today. Just tell me, you're here in the States, you told me off camera, what is your favorite part about being in the United States?
Eating the real spam.
Eating real spam.
I mean, there's spam in the Philippines, but it tastes different.
It's different.
Just like with Oreos. Yeah. So we do have the regular Oreos in the Philippines, but it tastes different. So whenever I come to the U.S., I tend to bring loads of packs of Oreos for him.
Part of me, my cynical side, I was like, I bet you we just have more chemicals. And I bet you the reason why our spam's better is we just put more sodium and more salt in it.
Yeah,
because
yet.
the United States is not healthy, so you're telling me it tastes better.
But it tastes good.
You know what we call it? Salt. Might not be good for you, but I'm glad you like the Spam here in the United States. So we're going to dive into insurance. I want everyone to understand how important insurance documentation is. And the great thing with insurance documentation is if you get it done right, claims come back and they come back paid. Or what happens is a lot of the claims, they're still going to come back and they're going to audit you. But what will happen is we know ahead of time, because our offsite team's done such a great job with documentation, that we're going to be able to fight those claims really, really easily. So let's just take something as simple as a wheelchair. They're going to audit that wheelchair to make sure that a walker and a cane have been, say, hey, so-and-so can't safely walk with a cane without fear of falls, or with a prior history of falls, and so-and-so doesn't have the strength to use a walker all day long to go to the bathroom, as an example. And our offsite team's going to help work with the provider to make sure that's in the chart notes so you get paid. It's
Right.
not as simple as getting a prescription. So tell me one of the things let's go down there. What are some of the things that our offsite team is currently working on documentation-wise?
They work on qualifying the chart notes as well as the prescription.
So what is qualifying chart notes? I mean, I have a chart note. What do you need a qualified chart note?
Right. Well, technically, like if a patient needs a wheelchair, we do receive chart notes from the hospitals or the doctor's office, but it doesn't stop from there, because these insurances have their own clinical criteria for documentation. So it needs to document this. The MRADLs has to be in there if it's for a wheelchair. We need to make sure that the house is accessible with a wheelchair and all of the good stuff. So our documentation team member are the one who's responsible to review the chart notes, making sure that we have those criteria noted, and to be able to be sure that once we submit the claim to the insurance, it's going to get paid.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it's all about. And every insurance is a little bit different. Like one of the insurances we're dealing with that is just a pain to work with right now for us, just saying, is United Healthcare. I swear they're not falling. Come on, United. They're going above and beyond what Medicare requires, and they're asking for things that are even harder. Now, harder than what's required. Now, we have some Spidey secrets that we've been using, totally legal. Don't worry. It's nothing illegal. But we have been able to work with United to make sure they're holding us, or they're going to adhere to the same standards that Medicare is adhering to. And that has not always been the case, but a lot of times you don't know until you figure out how to fight in regards to wheelchairs and chart notes. What does it look like? So we usually use Brightree, and how do we utilize the WIP status in Brightree in terms of chasing down chart notes and documentation?
So what's good about Brightree is that it will allow you to assign the notes to yourself. You can even put a date on it, and then when you're done, you can close it. So there's a status, whether it's open or closed. So you'll be ahead of your game, because if you have those open WIPs with you, those assigned to you, then you know that these are the patients or accounts that you need to work on. So I think it's like bookmarking.
It is. And what's nice about that is, let's say, because people often ask, well, Eric, how does it work with offsite team members when they're not in the office with us? Well, what's happening is they're still contacting, and it's whatever store we're working with. But what we do is we touch every single note every 2 days. And this might be, we fax the doctor, we might call the doctor, we might call the patient to call the doctor. But what we're doing is every time that happens, a note goes into Brightree. Now, if someone's using another program, that's totally okay. We need to know what note-taking program that you want. But this is where it's nice. So in our store, we might not talk to the documentation team, but let's say let's just call her Betty, calls in and say, where's my wheelchair?
Right.
Hold on one second, Betty. Pull up Betty's note, pull up the wheelchair note, and you can see, well, you know what, Betty, I'm showing that April faxed your doctor 2 weeks ago, and we called this date, we called this date, we called this date, and I'm showing we faxed them again. We talked to Nancy at the office, and we also called you last week asking you to call the doctor. Did you call the doctor like we asked you to? Oh, no, I haven't. Okay, well, if you could, that'd be great, but if not, we would love to do it for you. So in some of these instances, they're ready to yell at us because they can notate everything. It really is like we've done everything in our power, and really the doctor just needs to get those chart notes in. And is that typically how it works?
Yes, that's how it works. So everyone is on the same page, whether you talk to anyone or whether that person who's handling that or our communications team member. So when a patient calls and asks, what's the update on my order? They have all the information in Brightree noted, because if it's not noted, it didn't happen.
Oh, exactly. Even if it did happen, if it's not notated, it did not happen. Now, another thing, the nice thing about documentation, at least the way our work does reauthorizations or PAR or prior authorization. What's the R stand for? Oh, prior authorization request is a PAR. So let's just say, let's do a CPAP mask or something that needs to be renewed every year. And what we'll do is, so let's say you have a prescription that's good for 12 months. Starting at month 11, it triggers a queue in Brightree, and we start working that documentation before we even need it. The beauty of this is, because we all know what happens is in the old days when you don't have enough work, things get pushed off. And then at 1 year and 2 days, customer comes in, I need this widget, whatever it happens to be, and we don't have a current prescription. So at which point, then that gets really awkward. The patient gets nervous. But now what's happening is we've ideally fax the doctor 30 days ahead. We get the new prescription. We do this with like diapers as an example. We get the brand new prescription, and then once we get the prescription, we call the customer and just say, hey, want to let you know, April, we have your new prescription. It's going to be ready. We're recording this podcast on July 11th. We might say, hey, April, your diapers are going to be ready for pickup on July 18th. Would you like me to ship them to you, or do you want to come into our store and pick them up? That's up to you. But we've done all the work ahead of you. Well, can I get it tomorrow? No, you can't get it tomorrow. It's good July 18th. But what we've done is we've done everything ahead of schedule. So we do this with diabetic shoes. We do this with incontinence products, you name it. And that's the beauty of having an offsite team work ahead. And so then really when the problems that we're running into are really not that we haven't done the work. It's when people switch doctors, switch insurances, move. That's when we're having the problems, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then even then we figure it out. We call the customer. We're like, we'd love to get you this item, and we can't get a hold of your doctor. And they're like, oh, you're right. My doctor is now Dr. Jackson instead of Dr. Smith.
Yeah.
So how receptive? So when our offsite team is calling the patients, how receptive are the patients when we call them?
A lot of patients would be like, I thought you guys are doing this, right? They'll be questioning, and then we'd be like, oh, it would be best if you can also help us call your doctor, because we did call the doctor.
Well, we are doing it, but we're not allowed to sign prescriptions. They don't let us do that.
That's right. So that's how it is. That's how it goes between us and then the patients. But it works pretty good, because most of the patients too, they'd be like, oh, thank you for calling me. At least now I know what to do, because if you hadn't called, I wouldn't have any idea that I'm due for a new prescription.
The ironic thing in all this is we were joking off camera is I was like, so when you guys are calling like Regents and Blue Cross, and are they in the Philippines as well too? And you're like, well, I haven't asked them about it, but we have heard some chickens in the background. Now we do everything amongst our team to make sure we have noise canceling headphones and no chickens in the background. But sometimes if you ever call like United Healthcare, this is just going to be the podcast where we rip on United Healthcare, where you might hear a chicken in the background. Well, that's because a lot of them are working from home as well too, because there's so much traffic and office space is expensive, and it keeps costs down. It really does keep costs down having offsite team members. Other things documentation wise that our listeners need to hear. What do we need to do for clean claims and to make sure things are moving forward?
Well, we need to make sure that we are doing an extensive training. So just because you know something, it doesn't mean that the rules will be the same.
Oh, exactly.
Insurance loves changing, doing some changes from time to time. So we want to make sure that we're checking on that. And at the same time, you really have to review. So it's not just look at the paperwork. It wasn't like that. You really have to dive into, you have to give our vision, compassionate touch. And how do you do that with your work?
Exactly. And it's one of those things. So Mark's kind of our multimedia guy behind the scenes, and he makes videos for internal use amongst some of our clients. So what he'll do is he'll give you, he would give your team like a 3-minute video on how you want the wheelchair documentation to go. So it goes from here to here. You know, for example, customer walks into the store, calls, we fax the doctor. Are we going to do a fitting inside the store, in the home? What does that look like? Do we need a fitting? Maybe it's an insurance that we don't. And he'll do all this. But he was sending this to our executive team to just sign off on it again. And it was one of those things, we had to send it back to him twice, not because it was right when he did it. But from the time he did it, 2 insurance rules changed, which isn't that big of a problem. So all we have to do is just, hey, Mark, I need you to change these 2 slides because this is how the process for the insurance companies have changed. And so that's one of the nice things. We'll offer your team, we have the videos set up for your team so you know whether or not it's a PAP process, a documentation process. It really depends on how big of a team you have. Some of the clients that we're working with, they only have 1 or 2 employees for their store. Other stores, when you have, our store across all of our locations, we're nearing 50 employees, so it's a little bit harder to get everyone on the same page. So it's one of those things you need to know what to do. So since you've come here to the States, besides the spam thing, which I think is kind of cool, I'm still not going to eat it because I don't like spam. And I have this idea that it's more of like, that's bad email is really what spam is. But what are some things you've learned from last year's visit to this year's visit coming to the States?
Well, a lot of things, it's the second time, but then it feels like the first, because a lot of things have changed. There's quite more experience now because I was able to interact with the physician's office. We were able to do that. At the same time, I was able to interact with the patients. And what's cool about it, because earlier I was taking a phone call, and then the lady that I'm talking to, she was like, "Are you in Yakima store?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm in Yakima." "Oh, I need you to check something for me." So, the feeling of checking the stock room itself and the inventory and getting back
neat?
And
and today you were in the doctor's office. What did you learn about going to the doctor's office today and interacting with their staff?
So it's building connections with them, like knowing who you've spoken with over the phone. When I was in the Philippines, like, oh my God, they're real. They're real people. So, and then just hanging out with them, and then interaction it's different when you do things face to face than virtually. But then again, the things.
Well, and I heard the story. We were. I think everyone struggles with Chartnotes. So we're trying to get these Chartnotes for these medical supply items, and you were talking to the doctors or the person in front, and like, what's the problem with the doctors getting these Chartnotes into Epic, and why can't we get it? And it was nice. It wasn't our fault. It wasn't her fault. And she's like, yeah, the doctors who work here don't know Epic yet.
Yes.
And there's not a whole lot we can do about that one, because if the doctor who needs to put the Chartnotes in, the only person who can do it, doesn't know how, I don't know how else to do it. But what we did do even in that case is we did find someone in the office who knows how to put the Chartnotes in. So then as the doctor has a question, we'll say, go talk to so-and-so. She knows how to do it. And that's probably what will happen. A lot of times the doctors will hand off to whoever does it, and then they'll just have to sign off on it. But that's some of the fun. You got to go in and you got to see them in person, right?
Yes, that's right. I was also able to do set up a hospital bed. So we have different hospital beds in the Philippines.
I thought you looked pretty strong. So you set the hospital bed all of yourself.
No, can I say his name?
No, I'd rather not. But you were with one of the operations technicians.
And then a CPAP setup today. We did one CPAP setup with a patient, and then which is kind of neat.
So it's been great having April here in the store this week, and it's one of those things, like I said, we started off, I'm not happy that we had to lay off 4.5 on-site team members. But it was just it's part of finances. We can't do magic math. But I will say one of the things that has been nice is what we do at Offsite Team is we train people up ahead of time, and then we can place them in your company. So for example, right now I can tell you, if you call us today, I can give you an employee tomorrow. Someone's all trained. And in the process, we had several, and in the process of laying 4.5 team members off, we did have to utilize 1 or 2 of them to come into our store virtually to do some of that paperwork, because it's really one of those things. It's a dollars and cents thing. If Medicare is going to cut our reimbursement, if Medicaid is going to cut our reimbursement, we've got to make it up somewhere. And that's really, we are here to help you and your store and your team so we can continue to take really great care of our customers. So if you want to reach out to us, we would love to help you, whether it's little videos, consulting. We have Offsite team members ready to be placed into your store. So go ahead and go to offsiteteammember.com, reach out to us, send us an email, and we'd love to chat with you. But hey, it's been great talking with you in person, and let's do another a few more of these in person before you head back to the Philippines.
Sounds good.
See you guys next week.